What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PK podcast, where that PK stands for Preacher's Kid, not Perfect Kid. And speaking of not perfect, I'm here with my co-host, Eli Blevins from Wilmington, North Carolina. One of the most not perfect people that I know. Bro, right now I'm in Dallas in this like rainy whatever, which makes me think all roads lead to Wilmington. That's where all the godly people are headed. What's life like in Wilmington, North Carolina?
It's very stormy this morning, so don't worry. It's not any better right now, but everything's great. John, we're happy to be here. We have an amazing episode today. Got two of my friends with us, Caleb and Caroline Fry. They are amazing. And I just want to hear a little about their story. And hopefully you guys as listeners, you guys will be able to take a little bit from their experience. Maybe you can relate to them, but they are awesome. But we're just going to go through some introductions. So I'm going to start with Caroline. If you want to kind of share a little bit who you are, what you do, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So my name's Caroline, and I currently work at my parents' church. It's called C3 outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. Kind of like out in the country, even though it's exploding right now. So I was just 2 years old when they started the church. So I've always, had the dream of being in ministry. I felt called as a young girl, and now I get to work on staff as the children's minister, which was definitely my dream growing up. So that's just crazy that I'm already living out what God called me to do when I was just in elementary school. So went through my tour of ministry schools after graduating from high school. Did a ministry school at my parents' church, almost got kicked out. That's a fun story. Went to Highlands College, which was great. That's kind of where I just discovered my own salvation for myself, apart from my parents, and worked at another church. Now I'm back at my parents' church. So it's just awesome. God's hand's been on my life. And, I have my brother here, and we have an older sister. So we all grew up with the church, in the church, and, it's fun stuff. Lots of good times.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for that. Caleb, what about you, man?
Yeah, so I'm also at C3 Church in Clayton. Born and raised here. I never moved away. So I went to our church's college and graduated 2 years ago and got married and came on staff at the church. Initially, I started out as a communications director. So I was helping oversee social media, graphics, and some video stuff. But now recently, I switched over in the last year to overseeing our worship. And so that's what I've been doing the past year. And I've been doing worship. I've been on the worship team for about since beginning of high school. So about 8 years now, or I guess 9 years. Worship's kind of always been my thing at church. I've always served in the worship ministry. So stepping into the worship director role this past year has been kind of just, it's been super fun. Just getting to implement things that I've been wanting to do for a while. We're working on some original songs and an upcoming album. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on right now. And just awesome to be on staff at the church I grew up in.
That's amazing. Yeah, bro, you're super talented. I've heard you lead before. You got the holy anointing on some of those songs. So great job.
It must be a PK thing. I just think that every PK has got this special musical anointing. Like Eli over here, the kid drummer that could, playing with his fake drumsticks in the middle of worship. I'm curious though. You threw it out there, so surely it's fair game to ask. A PK almost gets kicked out of their own parents or their own church's school. That takes either a next level of rebellion or something. I've got to know that story. How do you almost get kicked out of your own thing?
Oh man. So I was a secretive, rebellious PK teenager. You have the obvious ones that are I'm going
He's
to
one of
party
us.
and doing, yeah. And then there's the one that's no, I'm going to hide everything and no one's going to know, but I'm going to look like I have it all together and I'm, the perfect kid. So I had just gotten out of high school and out of a unhealthy relationship. And there's a rule that's not there anymore, probably because of me, where you're not allowed to date your first year. And that was not easy for me, being how old, 17 or 18, and cute guys at the church and flirting with me and that sort of thing. So so the rule was no dating. Ended up getting caught with a guy, keep it PG, making out or whatever. And parents found out. I felt like, look, sitting on the front row when my parents found out, when the leaders found out, like, everybody in the church was looking at me. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, like that feeling. It's like probably 5 people know, but it feels like the whole church is just like, I can't believe this happened, and it seems like the worst thing in the world. And so it felt like this huge mountain that I was like trying to get over. And my dad was like, this is just a bump in the road. But I had to sit down with the college director, and he was like, listen, like, I could easily kick you out for this, but you need to make the decision if you're going to stay and abide by these rules or if you want to leave. And I was like, well, I don't have anywhere else to go, and it would look really bad if I left. So I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to stay. So I stuck it out, and then I got out of there and moved to Alabama. so yeah, if you have weird rules like that at your church, just don't break them.
Yeah, or keep a secret, right?
Or keep a secret, yeah. Don't get caught. But your sin will always find you out. So I mean, what are you gonna do?
I'm picturing that, I don't remember the name of it, but that military movie where the guy gets caught doing something and his commander's like, you need to decide if you're in or out. And he's like, I've got nowhere else to go. Like, I don't want to, but like, here's where we are. Right. That's amazing. Shout out to Dad, who said, hey, even though every single person is staring at the back of your head right now, this is just a bump in the road. Like, this is just a thing. This is just a whatever. I grew up in a church context with church discipline, very Baptist, and we were hardcore on dating is for dummies, but courting is for Christians. And if it's alliterated, it came straight from the Bible. If I would have been caught doing that, it would have been like a stand in front of the church on a Sunday night or Wednesday night, confess the sin, and be not allowed to lead music or sing in the choir or any of those things for a certain period of time, so that all the choir members could look down from the platform and judge you. Mm-hmm. So the secret for me was not getting caught. That was not, maybe that's an episode for another time. Ways to not get caught. That's the one we'll have to not let the parents know we're putting that one out. But
right. Keep that one a secret.
And that one may just go in the archives just for our fun.
Exactly.
That one's going to be on the TikTok channel. That way no parents will ever see it.
That's right.
Eli, you were talking to me just the other day about spotlight stuff, which every PK struggles with. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I for sure think that as pastors' kids, we all know the spotlight is always brighter on us, or we think it is. Like Caroline, you just said you thought everyone was turning around. It was probably only like 3 or 4 people that actually like knew or cared or something in between. But it feels like everything is just so much bigger because of who you are, who your last name is, what you mean to the church. Like, it just feels bigger. And I just want to know from you guys, how do you handle those like spotlight moments? I know for me, my gut reaction was always to just appear perfect. And if I could appear perfect, then no one would ask any questions and everything would just kind of get swept under the rug and we'd go about things. And, of course, later in life that comes back to bite you. But that's kind of how I dealt with it, especially in like middle school and high school. But I want to hear from you guys. How did you guys handle the spotlight?
I'll go ahead and take that. I think, what I did do was I tried to be perfect and tried to, act like my life was together. That's what we shouldn't do. I don't think that's what we should. What we should do is, I like to think of like pressure as you can either like make you or break you, kind of like a diamond. If pressure can make a diamond if you like use it correctly, or it can like break it if you don't use it correctly. So I think of, the spotlight kind of as a pressure. And I even think today, like in my life today, when I feel that spotlight, that pressure, because everybody feels that at points in their life, I feel like utilizing that to your advantage, utilizing the pressure and the spotlight to say, instead of trying to be perfect, instead of trying to come across like I have it all together, I'm going to use this spotlight and this pressure to kind of take me to the next level, to kind of like lift me up a little bit, to take me to the next level. Um, and so instead of trying to come across like the perfect pastor's kid, I'm just going to be myself and try my best since people are looking at me and if I have a spotlight on me and people are looking at me, maybe I can be an example to somebody who's younger than me. Maybe I can be an example to another pastor's kid to say, hey, you don't have to just go off and act perfect. You can be yourself. But I think as pastor's kids, there can be a responsibility that we're leading the church as a family. And so to use that pressure, I think, to your advantage and to use that spotlight, to almost use it like as an example that, we aren't trying to be perfect, but there are some expectations, I think, that our parents have on them. And maybe those expectations can trickle down to us and take us to the next level as individuals, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it so well. And I think for so many people who are listening, be yourself and don't try to be something that you're not. I know me and John have tried our best to be things that we are not. And it's always better when you're just yourself. Caroline, what about you? What do you think about that, being in the spotlight and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I always, I just kind of had this revelation like a year ago or something. But when I was in like third grade and kids ministry, we were in our small groups. The teacher asked like a question about the Bible story, like something really simple, like probably what kind of, like who was swallowed up by the whale type question. And I'm like, they're also learning about this story probably for one of the first times. And nobody knew the answer. So they're like, well, Caroline knows the answer. Her dad's the pastor. And I didn't realize what kind of impact that comment had on me, like just throughout the rest of my like middle school and high school until I got to college. Like just because in that moment, I felt like, oh my goodness, if I don't know every story in the Bible, if I don't have all the answers, like people are looking to me for the answers. People are looking to me to have it all together. And I'm just 8 years old. And so I like lived with that, in the back of my mind, just, I have to be the leader of this group. I can't be the one answering vulnerable questions, saying like, that I don't have it all together, that I am like struggling with this, because I have to be the leader. I have to be the example. And like, I put that pressure on myself and I carried that. It wasn't anything that my parents put on me. But now I just came out of like a very traumatic season of my life. And that like broke any kind of pride, any kind of judgment that I had in my heart towards other people. And now the spotlight is like, I want to be as vulnerable, as real. Like, how low can I go? How humble can I be so that I can relate to other people and show them, listen, we all have temptations. We all make mistakes. Like, you need someone to be able to go to and talk to. And that was my biggest thing, is I didn't have anybody to go to or talk to, just because I was scared, because I lived with this fear of, what are people going to think about me? What are people going to judge me? And so I want to be someone that people can come to. So like, put me in the spotlight, but I'm going to be raw, and I want you to be raw, and let's talk about our issues and our struggles together, and let's go to the Bible and let's walk through it. Like, it's part of life. We're going to have struggles and go through stuff. So the more real and vulnerable that I can be, which is that's super hard but super freeing when I was able to get to this place.
I don't think that from Sunday school teachers to small group leaders, people are going to suddenly just stop saying ridiculous comments like that. Yeah. As much as I wish we could outlaw it, I remember being right around that same age, and I even remember the question that was asked. I'm 6 years old, sitting in a Sunday school class, and I didn't understand there was a difference between John the Baptist and John the disciple. And I remember the teacher made such a big deal about that. Like, oh, I taught the pastor's kid something, and like gloated on it for like 5 minutes out of shock. And I internalized that as okay, I guess I'm not allowed to get questions wrong, or I'm going to embarrass my family. Um, I'm not sure people are going to ever stop saying stuff like that. But what I love are the amount of parents that are listening to these episodes to make sure that we're not giving their kids any ridiculous ideas. I wonder, what are some things that you wish your parents maybe could have known or asked or said around that age range, maybe to have helped you process that? Like for me, I wish that my parents would have known that was happening so they could have said, hey, sometimes in class, you're going to be expected to know all the answers, and it's okay if you don't. Things like that. What are your thoughts on that? What would you say to a parent of a younger PK, or maybe a teen who's already deep into the internalizing and hiding mode?
Yeah. I would say for a parent, the biggest thing that like I needed um was just someone to be there for me and talk to me. Because when we were growing up, like the church was growing with us. Like we were babies when the church started. So when it was like the fastest growing church in the area or whatever, um, like we're like growing up, like prime years or upper elementary, middle school, times when we really need our parents. And I have amazing parents, and they did intentionally create family time for us. But someone told me one time that wrecked my world. They said, "You are more important than the church," and that like took me back because I was like, "No, the church is way more important than me." Like we do everything for the church, and we give all of our time to the church, and the church is Christ's bride. But when I heard that me as a pastor's kid, I'm more important than the church, like that just really let me know like I have some wounds just from a lot of my parents' focus being on the church during this time. So I would say give them a place to just talk, hang out, a safe place to share what went on at church. If there were any conversations that hurt you, talk about the good things, but definitely talk about the things that embarrassed you, that were sad, that made you mad, because we didn't really talk about the negative things. So I didn't feel comfortable saying like, I didn't know the answer in church. I don't know why I didn't feel comfortable with that, but I just didn't.
I think one thing that really helped me is being in an environment that wasn't the church, because I did so many things that were involved with church, youth group, serving at church. And like sometimes like your life can just be church. And even like sports teams in the area and stuff, like some of those kids would go to our church. And that was kind of like my like, safe place, because I could just be myself there. I didn't have to be Caleb the pastor's kid. I honestly like barely told anybody I was a pastor's kid there. Like if I could, I wouldn't tell them because I just wanted to be myself. And that was kind of a really cool place to kind of establish myself as a person and as an individual, and not as Caleb the pastor's kid. And so I think as much as you can, trying to find an environment where you don't have to worry about people knowing you as the pastor's kid, but you can just be known as yourself, and that can help you develop friendships, like not based on like being a pastor's kid or worrying about people being your friend because you're the pastor's kid, or not being your friend because you're the pastor's kid. But you can just having a safe place that you can go to outside of church, I think is very important. So trying to find that, whether it's going to like a conference once a year or finding a place you can go, like I did weekly. I don't know. I feel like that's very important to being in an environment that's not like church based.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Both of you guys did. I think even for me, I can't even remember because did any of you guys go to like a Christian school growing up, like one of those like private Christian schools?
Yes.
Yes, that was me. And I
All hands
remember,
raised.
yeah, I just even remember being in sixth grade and someone who I actually like know and really respect and love now, who was my teacher then. But even then, they would give out candy for each Bible question we got right. And I was like, well, I'm just going to sit here and, try my best to just to rack up all this candy. And I remember I got a question wrong one time, and I could just feel, and I was sitting at the front of the class like I should, because I was trying to be the goody two shoes in Bible class. And I remember I got a question wrong, and I just remember I was like, I felt like, kind of like what Caroline alluded to earlier, I felt like 25 people were just staring at me like, how did he get this question wrong? Like, he's the one in the front row trying to get all this candy for getting Bible questions right, and the pastor's kid, and he's getting these questions wrong. And I remember I don't even like know if it was like in the same timeline or not, but I remember talking to my dad about another Bible question, and he was like, "Oh, I have to look up stuff all the time too. Like, I don't just know everything off the top of my head." And just him even just saying like a comment like that to me was like, okay, that takes the pressure off of me feeling like I have to know everything off the top of my head in any given circumstance, whether I'm in school or at a coffee with somebody, or, well, I don't drink coffee, which is one of my biggest sins in life, but or at lunch with somebody. And I don't have to always feel like I know the answer. And I think to me that kind of freed me up so much to not feel like I have to do that. And it gave me a place to not just be Eli, the pastor's kid, like Caleb was saying. It allowed me just to be Eli, the kid who liked to play soccer, the kid who watches sports and play guitar and did that kind of thing. And so yeah, I think that's so important, just kind of for all of us to kind of remember, listening, that you don't have to know all the answers. You're not going to be expected to know all the answers, because that's going to be impossible, and you're going to burn yourself out on that.
More than even just knowing all the answers, it's knowing the Lord for yourself. And every PK has kind of had a different perspective to this, which is why it is the question, like the one that we repeat in every single episode, just in case someone tunes in for the first time to this one, about having a personal relationship, being rooted and grounded in your own faith, not the faith of your parents or the faith of your peers or of your church, but for yourself. Eli, you were just talking to me about this yesterday, and I'm curious, for everybody, rooted and grounded in your own relationship, how do you do that? Or maybe even, where did that begin? When did you discover that for yourself?
I got saved and baptized when I was like 6, 7 years old. And that's when God really got a hold of my heart as a young girl in kids ministry. And it took until I went away for college, when I was at Highlands College, to be in an environment where I wasn't the senior pastor's daughter there, and people didn't know who I was. I was like introducing myself to people and telling them where I'm from, and I was like, oh my goodness, like what do I want to tell people? Like, who am I? And do I want to tell them that my dad's a pastor of a church? Like, that's not who I am. That's just like part of my life. But so and then in all the chapels and church services and stuff, I really was like, I have to discover who God is for me. Like, it's not about it being my parents' relationship with God. I'm not under their I'm not in their church right now, and like, what do I believe? And I just like had to get alone with God, and just after, just working on my relationship with him, and just basically like surrendered my life to him all over again. And that's really what I needed to do, because up until then I felt like my faith was somewhat attached to my parents, or I was like riding the wave of their salvation. And when I had to discover it for myself, if my parents weren't ever in the picture, I had that moment when I was in college, and that was powerful for me. So now, it's just cultivating that relationship with him. I do, like, for my devotionals, I do the SOAP method, which is scripture, observation, application, prayer, off of like one scripture. that I normally get from the devotional Jesus Calling, which I really recommend. And I love to worship. I have worship music on all the time in my house, in my car. And also, I'm just learning the habit of silence and solitude. That's one discipline that I am recently just trying to implement into my schedule, into my life, and allowing God to speak to me in those silent moments.
Yeah, I think one thing I appreciate that my parents did was they just worried about training us up, kind of how it tells us in Proverbs, train up a child the way they should go. When they're old, they won't depart from it. And so that's what I think our parents did a good job of that. They did a good job of showing us, like, they always led by example. And, but I think they never pressured us to live our faith a certain way. They never like put any pressure on us. They like kind of let us grow into our um, faith and our faith-based decisions on our own, like praying Jesus into our heart and baptism and stuff like that. They never pressured us, which I think is really important. But they let us make those decisions on our own. And I think for me, I think I lived kind of like, I was a really driven, I still am like a really driven person. And so I would read my, Bible every morning and pray for like 20 minutes from the time I was probably like in third grade to like, I mean, still to this day, I try to do that. But for the first, I mean, when I was younger, when I was doing that, it was mainly just because that was what I was supposed to do. It wasn't really like I had like a relationship with God, like I did, but it was more like I was just doing it to check it off the list. I think it was in late middle school, early high school that I really started pursuing a relationship with God and what that meant. And I think that came based on discovering like a lot about God's love and grace and mercy, and that He doesn't want to have a relationship with me um, to do good things or to just do good things for Him, but He wants a relationship with me because He loves me. And discovering that was huge for me. That like I'm not just doing things for God and trying to be a perfect person for God just to make Him happy, but God's already done everything to reconcile our relationship, and all the bad things that I've done, He died for. And recognize, like, when I discovered like really what that meant and that revelation, like everything changed for me. And I think when I really began to understand that, what that meant and all that God had done for me, I really started developing the relationship with God and not just like reading the Bible and praying.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's all that's so spot on. John, do you remember maybe in your life even like, do you remember the moment where it kind of switched for you? Just kind of like, because you grew up in a church where you had to do everything. Like how many days in a row were you at church? Like every week you were there like every single night?
6. The only day we didn't do something church was Monday. Um, you know, I accepted Christ very young, at the age of 4, and I'm confident that I was born again then. I remember it vividly. I remember the message. I remember all of it. But growing in that relationship, like a 5-year-old is not going to be super deep spiritually. And so I remember hearing all these people in church share their testimony, like God rescued me from drugs and God saved me from prison. And, I was deep in sexual sin and I'm, 8 and I don't even know what sex is, but I'm like, it must be bad, and so I'm like, I told my grandpa, I'm like, I'm going to get me a testimony. Like when I grow up, I'm getting me a testimony. I'm going to go church to church and tell people about all the things God saved me from. So now I got to go do some of those things. And he's like, hold up. No, you don't. You've got a better testimony. And I'm like, no, I don't. No one wants to hear I never really did anything. And now I'm here story. No one wants to hear that. So my motivation for diving into sin was certainly not in search of a testimony. It was a just a stagnant whatever. And I remember a pivotal moment, December 17th, 2003. It was kind of step one. It was first base. And then when I was 16 or 17, kind of around to second, and both had to do with a camp experience. Like, if you're a PK, don't skip out on camp. God has something really awesome for you there. Don't think that you know everything. This is just a little aside, but God wrecked my life at camp, and then working at camp. Going and taking a job there. That was when it finally came home for me. I was sitting at the piano in the chapel, and I was doing this Instagram live for the camp, and all the people that are getting excited the night before and watching, and it was like there's like 300 or 400 people on this Instagram live, and all of a sudden, right there, as I'm saying all this stuff that I know to say that didn't actually mean anything to me, God met me in the chapel, broke my heart. And like, I have a picture on my phone of just the tears that are on the piano keys. And I had to leave the Instagram live because I'm like, the camp director doesn't need to be sobbing on the video when a new kid who's scared to come is logging on. And so I can say it was a progressive thing for me that God made himself known and my relationship really became solid. And so to every PK, this is not going to be an overnight thing. You're not going to become your dad or your mom overnight. And praise the Lord, you don't have to become your mom or your dad. But if you'll Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 the heck out of this, just trust him with the day by day, small things, one thing at a time. Let God do his own chiseling work. It happened for me slowly but surely, and I wish it would have been fast, and I wish I had like a whole teenage life of on fire for God, and I don't. But I am thankful that God did what he did slowly and progressively, and looking back, I can see his hand every single step of the way.
I do want to hear, now that we just got through some of the serious parts of this, I want to hear some funny stories from you guys. Do you guys have any embarrassing moments from either your time as a pastor's kid, or funny stories, or about your parents or anything like
please
that?
Throw dad under the bus. Like,
okay, I can throw dad under the bus.
All liberty to throw dad under the bus.
I got one. So one time, it was like the week after like a summer camp. So one of my friends is up there like sharing her testimony.
I was going to
like
share
right
this
before
story.
the offering. Well, you can fill in the blanks if I miss a step. So she's up there sharing her testimony about just what God did in her life at the youth camp and everything. And then all of a sudden you just hear this like water, like kind of coming out of a faucet, it sounds like. And it's getting really loud. Like, it's almost like you can't even hear what she's saying anymore. All you hear is just this water. And then it starts dripping, and it sounds like someone is peeing. And it's very obvious that that's what's happening now. And so I'm on the front row. I'm just like, I know what's happening. I know it's my dad. He forgot to turn his mic off, and he's in the bathroom taking a break. And so the sound guy gets all flustered, doesn't know what to do, like turns off my friend's mic up there sharing her testimony, turns up my dad's mic, and then at the same time, his toilet is broken, so he flushes it, and it was like a never-ending flush. It just keeps going, and it like there's no, like, it was so hard to recover from it. But somehow, like, the people on stage didn't know really what was going on, so they were just like, all right, like, let's give it up and that sort of thing. And then my dad is coming out to preach, and he has no idea what just happened, but everybody in the room knows what just happened. And so, he's like, what's up, everybody? Like, great to be here. Let's give it up for our live stream watching online. And everybody starts dying laughing because because it's like, obviously we just heard a live stream, and then he's talking about the live feed. And anytime he talked about any kind of water or anything in a sermon, everyone just started laughing, and he was so confused. And then my mom finally told him afterwards, but that I was on the front row. I was so embarrassed. And now my dad just jokes about it.
That's like a gold star. Who was it that we talked to, John, that had like actual like rewards for their dad or something like that? That whenever they had an embarrassing story, they would like sit around and give an award out or something like that.
I think it's the other Fry family that we interviewed.
Oh, Devin Fry?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Devin Fry's family, the PKs have different like awards for dumb things that they do, and they added a category for their dad on the board.
That's so funny. They spelled our name wrong though.
Yeah, they add some extra letter in there or something.
Unnecessary.
Shout out to that Fry family too.
Yeah,
there are two types of pastors in the world: those that have unmuted their microphone in the bathroom, and those that haven't yet. It's coming. It's going to happen for everyone. It's like a rite of passage. God can't bless your church unless you've done that at least one time.
True.
The live stream is awesome that he just like segued right into that, and it's like
that's like Holy Spirit right there. Like that's from the Lord.
Oh man, Caleb, do you have any stories?
Yeah, so an embarrassing moment for me involving my dad as a PK moment is there was a time when I was playing soccer and I was playing goalie, and it was a one-on-one moment, and I went one-on-one with this guy, and I tackled him, and I got pretty injured. My wrist, I think I broke my wrist, and my dad immediately jumped over the fence to come to my side on the soccer field. And now the funny thing about this is this became his go-to illustration for like his sermon every few months, when he would talk about like the prodigal son and the father coming to rescue his son, how God is a father coming to rescue us. And so, being involved in his sermons every few months because of that story of me being injured on the soccer field, I don't know, it was just kind of funny.
Yes, I just want to say thank you guys for being on here. You guys are awesome, what you guys are doing. We'll link your social media stuff in the notes below so everyone can go and give them a big old follow. But again, thank you guys so much for being on here. Caleb, you need to write music, keep writing more songs, because I love them, and you're a rock star.
Yeah, so we just dropped our album Faithful Still with Real Hope Worship. Has about 7 songs that our team wrote. And so you can go check that out and stream it, and see what we're up to at C3 Church in Clayton.
Yes, love it. Love it.
Let's go. And then coming next month, we'll be interviewing Caroline's dog here for the PK Pets segment of the show.
PK Pet.
I love that.
I invited my PK wife's dog to be on the show, but he said we couldn't afford him. So
you can follow her on Instagram too.
Oh gosh.
She has an Instagram?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love it. I have
swipe up in the show notes to follow Caroline's dog, in case that's the content that you need. We're always just bringing you everything that you need to survive this PK life.
Is your dog a well-behaved dog, or does it need salvation as well?
I bring her to church with me. Like, she desperately needs Jesus. I'm just waiting for her to accept him and start living a life for him. But she's wild.
That's amazing. I feel the same about my cats right now that I have now. I have cats now. I'm a cat dad. So that's where I am in life.
We got 2 cats.
That's right. Okay, the cat life is the life.
But
John, do you have any animals?
That is a perk about being the pastor's kid, is you can bring your dog to church and just leave him in the office. No one cares. We've done that. PK perks.
We've done that before. Oh, I want to hear, what are some great PK perks that you guys have experienced over the years? What's like some of the best ones?
I think my favorite is our parents were really intentional when they would travel, to not just travel alone, but to bring one of us on.
Yep.
And So my dad would go to Louisiana to speak at his church, and so I'd get to go to some LSU games, and
Clutch.
that was like the highlight of my PK traveling, was going to 3 LSU games.
That
in
is
Baton Rouge.
awesome. Yep, that ministers to me. I love that.
One time, so like there's different celebrities that are pastors' kids undercover, and one of those is Katy Perry, and her parents came and spoke at my dad's church for like a First Wednesday service, and she had a concert the night before that. So they got there like the day before, took us in a limo, brought us in backstage. We got to sit with her parents during the concert, hang out with her afterwards. Like, that was kind of crazy, because you hear a lot of stuff like in the church world, like, you know, you get to meet like different pastors that are popular, but meeting Katy Perry was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one right there. We're trying to get her on the show, and she won't respond to any of our texts right now. So,
well, I could call her for you, you know.
Yeah, if you could put
We're
in
like best friends now.
If you could put in a good message for us with old Katie, that would be that'd be amazing. I think give her John's number. He does all the connections.
Yeah, next year we're just doing all celebrity episodes. We've got Katy Perry, we've got the Jonas Brothers.
Good.
There's a few PK rock stars out there. Andy Stanley,
Morgan Wallen's the pastor's kid.
Country
is he? Singer Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
When I heard his song Whiskey Glasses, I was like, I relate to this on a PK level. Like, this makes sense.
These are communion glasses.
Yeah,
these are
communion glasses.
Oh, come on. Well, thank you guys for being with us today. We really appreciate you. And like we said, swipe up in the show notes of this episode to follow Caleb and Caroline Fry on all the social medias, and Caroline's dog. You don't want to miss out on that content. And we'll see you again right back here at the PK Podcast.